Hello everyone, this is Red from Red's Third Dimension Gaming, and today I'm bringing you a review on Final Fantasy Type-0 HD for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Way back in 2011, Final Fantasy Type-0, which was originally called Final Fantasy 13 Agito, and eventually that name got changed to Final Fantasy Type-0. The reason that many fans think that they changed the name is because they didn't want to associate it with Final Fantasy 13 anymore, because there was a lot of backlash towards Square after that game came out. Since that time, the game has changed immensely. The PlayStation 4 version of the game is a perfect example of what a company should do for a remastered version of a game. I invested almost 50 hours in the game in order to do every sub-event, almost every side quest, and all the main story missions. Final Fantasy Type-0 HD is fast-paced, thought-provoking, and quenches my thirst for a real Final Fantasy role-playing game. The storyline in Final Fantasy Type-0 HD is a mix between Final Fantasy 13 and Final Fantasy 8. The whole idea of having students in a Final Fantasy universe is a splendid concept. It makes me think back to Final Fantasy 8 because of the story being taking place in the military academy called Seed. If you remember that, it's a very good game, and this game is just as good as Final Fantasy 8. The Final Fantasy 13 part of the game is some of the story being about crystals and LLC, and different ideas that came from Final Fantasy 13 play into this game too. In Final Fantasy Type-0 HD, you play as Class 0, and they are an elite military group of students, and towards the beginning of the game, the Emperor of Militesi has gone missing, and Cid Olestein takes command of the kingdom. After that, Cid declares war on the other three nations because he fears of the White Tiger crystal losing its power. So Cid goes all crazy, and later on in the game you'll learn many more crazy things about Cid. And one of the reasons why Class 0 is chosen to fight to save Academia and the world of Orience is because they can use eidolons, magic, and are a bunch of tough kids. Throughout the tragedies and all the mysteries and the deaths in this game, I found myself obsessed. I couldn't stop playing the game. I was playing it for countless hours, and it is such a good game. One thing that Square Enix does really well in this game is that they build upon each and every character in the game. When you can become emotionally attached to certain characters like Rem, and even side characters like Emina, that is hard to do nowadays when there's so many games that basically the story they throw out the window and they just focus on gameplay. This game has great gameplay and a good story, and you'll feel for these characters. One thing that I want to talk about that I usually don't talk about in most of my reviews are side quests and sub-events, because this game has so many of them. If you dedicate all your time in finding everything in the game, you're going to have easily over 100 hours of gameplay. There's so many side quests, caverns, Chocobo missions, and even a special airship that is secret in the game called the Setzer. For Chocobos, you can capture them on the world map. You can also bring them back to the Chocobo Ranch, where you can breed Chocobos, and there are several different variations of the Chocobos. Sub-events in the game allow you to complete certain tasks, and at the end you get really good rewards and awesome cutscenes. And there's also a sense of progression. If you forget to talk to a person in a certain time in the game, you may screw up the entire sequence of events later on. For instance, there is a Carla event where you talk to her, then the next time you go, she asks you for 1,000 gil. You're going to want to make sure you give her that 1,000 gil, because potentially you could double your investment at the very end, but if you do not give her 1,000 gil, 10,000, or 100,000, if you don't give her at least all of those, you're not going to make back nearly as much as you put in. So you're going to want to make sure you give her the 1,000, give her the 100,000, and give her the 10,000. And it's little things like this that make the game so good, because it's a sense of progression. You have to prioritize some of these events over others. And there's also a New Game Plus so that you can go back and finish the rest of the sub-events and find out new things that you never did before. One side note is for the Emina missions, if you keep doing them, you're in for a real treat. a naked one maybe. I'm not going to tell you any more than that. And the events do not seem tacked on at all. They were very satisfying and enjoyable. Most games on the side missions, they pretty much just tack them on and they don't feel tacked on. They actually add to the story. You learn more about the characters and you gain a deeper interest into each and every one of these characters. The only problem I had with these side missions are the caves and deserts. They look so bland and linear. The only bright side is that you actually get good treasures at the end, but they're so linear. You have some pathways to go where you can go into opposite ends, but it's not dispersed out that much. And the caves do not look that great. They look very last gen. That's the only problem I had with these side events and side quests and everything is the caves and deserts. They look terrible. And their positive is there's a hidden airship. I'm not going to show you where it is, but I probably will put a video up on how to get it soon. It's called the Setzer. It's a hidden airship, and when you're flying in it, you can shoot down enemies. And trust me, it actually works really well. And it's not like Drakengard 3, where you have horrible gameplay mechanics with the dragon. No, this works fine, and it's great. You can actually go to certain areas in the game that you weren't able to before, and there's a secret boss in the game called Nox Suzaku, and he's very hard to find, and I will leave that up to you to find him. He doesn't always appear, and it's very hard to find him, but you can only find him with the airship. The graphical difference between Final Fantasy Type-0 for PSP and PS4 are very highly noticed. If you watch this comparison video, you can see how the graphics looked before and how they looked after. On the plus side, there are amazing looking characters like Ace and Rem who have been completely redone. But then some of the side characters, they look pretty horrible. They don't look anywhere near the high quality main characters. Academia is in the same scenario, where Academia looks really amazing compared to the original, and it blows some games out of the water in terms of graphics. But in Towns, they look terrible. They look really bland and very plain. It almost looks like they were taken out of a PS2 game and slapped into there. That's how bad they look. They didn't look that great in the original, but it doesn't really look like they took a lot of time to make them real detailed like they did in Academia. When I think of a good looking town, Final Fantasy X has better looking towns and cities than this game does. And I'm talking about back in the day when it was on PS2. PS2, it still looked better than that. And that was 2000, 2001. This is about 15 years later, and we're getting graphics like this. It should have been updated to have better looking towns. Now, overall, I think there are 3 different types of cutscenes in this game. Next gen, high quality, and low resolution. Some of the cutscenes, it looks like they just copied, pasted them over straight to this game, and they didn't do anything else. It just looks like they stretched it, and that was it. Literally, when I was playing it on my live stream, I thought, this is how the rest of the game's gonna look. So I didn't play it, and then I waited a couple weeks and played it again. The game actually gets a lot better looking as you play it. And it's because some of the cutscenes are taken from the PSP version of it. And then you have some fantastic dialogue cutscenes which look great, and they're like full HD. And even during some of the missions, there's some really fantastic looking cutscenes. But at the very end of the game, you're going to want to finish the game because no doubt in my mind they look next gen. Final Fantasy 15, compare those graphics to this, they look so similar, and it's amazing. I think if Square Enix had more time, they'd probably make the game even look better, and the whole game could look like that. But, you know, it takes a long time. They've been working on Final Fantasy 15 for almost 10 years. That's why it's looking so great. Also, there was a frame rate issue in the PSP version. It was very jaggedy looking, and it didn't run smoothly. PS4 version, I had no problems. It runs smooth, never had a graphical glitch or anything in the game, and the jaggediness is gone. The biggest highlight in this game is the gameplay and the way it presents itself. There are several aspects of the gameplay, such as Eidolons, which is actually a step forward in the Final Fantasy series because they're not vehicles. I cannot stress this enough, Square Enix. You give us vehicles again, I'm going to throw your game out a window. It doesn't make any sense to make Shiva into a motorbike or any of the other Espers, Eidolons, Aeons, whatever you want to call them, turning them into vehicles. It makes me want to puke how bad they were in Final Fantasy 13. The only problem I had with the Eidolons in this game was the fact that you had to sacrifice one of your party members just to use them. They are really cool looking and they work really well. but you have to kill off your member, and that counts as a death. And when you have a casualty, most of the time, you're not going to get an S ranking on a mission. So how are you supposed to get an S ranking and never be able to use your items? You can't. And you get really rare items sometimes from S rankings. That should be fixed, and you shouldn't have to sacrifice it. Go back to Final Fantasy X. See how perfect that Aeon summon system worked. It was perfect. You just summon it, and then eventually if it dies, then you come back in. Just work on that. I think in Final Fantasy 15 it worked really well. What they did is when you're low on health, your summon comes in, does an ultimate attack, and then he leaves. I don't think that system's perfect here because you can't use them all the time. You can only use them as soon as you're low on health, which actually ain't bad because if you're on low on health, he'll come in, but you're not completely dead. And another thing about the gameplay is Phoenix Downs don't seem to work at all. I tried using them in the game and they don't respawn my teammates. What are they used for then? Because they didn't seem to work very well. Phoenix Pinions, you have to equip that ahead of time and use it, and then you'll respawn, but those were the couple of things that I found wrong with the gameplay. There are also some really unique abilities that you can use, like Killsight and Breaksight strikes. These are really cool ways to tackle down enemies. Basically, when you beat up an enemy enough, a Killsight blow will show up on them, and you can just take them out, and usually they'll die in one hit. Unless it's a boss. If it's a boss, they might go down on their knees, and then you can attack it a lot with all 3 characters. Right as soon or right after an enemy attacks, you'll have the chance for a Breaksight strike, and this will do the same thing as a Killsight strike. And you want to use these to your advantage. When you're playing against Gilgamesh, he is a hard opponent. Even on level 99, he is really difficult. And this is one of the fastest ways to beat him, is using these Breaksight strikes. Overall, the gameplay is a hybrid between Final Fantasy XII and Kingdom Hearts. It's fast and it doesn't feel overcomplicated. It works much better than Final Fantasy XIII and a lot of the newer Final Fantasy games. Switching between characters worked great, and I think that should be implemented in Final Fantasy 15 also, because when I was playing the demo, they didn't seem to have it that you could switch between characters. Another A+ for the game are the Chocobos. You can use them to traverse the land and avoid enemies. And if you remember classic Final Fantasy games, you used to be able to travel with an above point of view, and that's how this game is. And it may remind diehard fans of the series of what the classic games used to look like. This is like a throwback to that. It looks awesome and it works great. The difficulty in Final Fantasy Type-0 HD can be changed at any time. So if it's too difficult for you, play it on Cadet Mode. It's very easy. They don't overcomplicate it. Although on Officer Mode, there are times that it will be hard. So you'll either have to grind, or there is another way to level up, which I showed you in a previous video. So go and click on that now. It'll help you get to level 99, and you won't have any problems if you're playing on Cadet. But if you're playing on Officer, you'll still have problems because of places like the Tower of Vegito, where the enemies are really high leveled and you have to kill like 100 of them just to get past one room. There are 14 levels in that area. Also, if you're playing on Agito difficulty, you get better rewards and sometimes better eidolons. You want to make sure if the mission is not too hard, just put on Agito and try to get through it. If it's too hard, then just switch back to Cadet or Officer. It depends on your level of Final Fantasy and RPG games. If you're a novice player, you're going to probably want to play on Cadet. If you're an advanced player, you're going to want to play on Officer because Agito adds 30 levels to the enemies. So if they're level 60, they'll be now level 90. Think about that when you're playing on the hardest level. The game also included many types of magic attacks. There's shotgun, rifle, bomb, missile, and rocket launcher. These different magic attacks add a unique and different take on magic. I don't remember anything like this in past games. One mode that was removed from the PlayStation 4 version of Type-0 is the multiplayer. I don't think many people that played Type-0 knew there was a multiplayer. There was actually a multiplayer where you could go online, play with your friends cooperatively, and Square Enix decided to cut it due to time. They wanted the game to come out earlier, so they cut that from it and they decided to do away with it. I do think this would be a great idea in future Final Fantasy games, because I would love to go online, play with my friends, because you can play as many different characters. It could work just like Bloodborne, except you already have the characters in the game, so you don't even have to worry about it. They can just choose which character they want to play as from your group, is what I think they should do. Or they could just take their character over. It'd be a fun way to do main missions, side missions. I think that's a good idea that they might have wanted to keep in the game. And finally, there are many ways to level up in the game. There are simulation training battles, where you can fight against multiple enemy soldier troops, and you can level up that way if you want. And that is for you to train and get better at the game. And you can also go to the training arena to complete certain side quests. Another way to level up is the secret training, which, again, look at my video on how to do that, and it's a great secret training exploit. Overall, Final Fantasy HD is fantastic. Its storyline's intriguing and has great characters. The game has top-notch graphics in some areas and some really bland graphics in other instances. Finally, this game has a fun, reliable battle system. Fans that have been waiting for a real Final Fantasy game will absolutely adore Final Fantasy Type-0 HD. I give this game a 9 out of 10. If you want the full review, go to throwingdigitalsheep.com. where I go into more detail and talk about every aspect of the game. If you'd like to buy the game, don't forget to use the Amazon link below. It'll help support my channel. And don't forget the thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe. See you guys.